Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bookercast, the podcast where books come to life.
And I'm so excited to dive into another amazing story with all of you.
Whether you're a bookworm or just love a good story, this is the place for you.
Every episode, we explore incredible books, talk about their stories and characters, and share insights that'll make you fall in love with reading all over again.
All right, let's not keep you waiting any longer. Get comfortable, and let's jump right into it.
Sounds good.
All right, so get ready, because today we are going deep into 100 Years of Solitude.
Ooh, one of my favorites.
I know, right? By Gabriel García Márquez.
It's a classic.
Such a big book.
It's huge, and it's like a continent, like you said, crammed into pages. Like, we're going to talk about generations of families, a mythical town, magical realism, all that.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot to unpack.
We got a lot to cover.
It's a cornerstone of Latin American literature.
Absolutely.
But you know what? I think one of the reasons it's so captivating is
What's that?
it speaks to just like universal human experiences, like love and loss and that pull of the past. It's just like dressed up in these like fantastical clothes.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, so picture this. Macondo.
Okay.
It's a town that literally sprang from a dream, and our main players are the Buendias. And we're going to start with the patriarch, José Arcadio Buendía. Now, this guy's force of nature. He's always chasing inventions and ideas.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about him is that he really embodies this tension between progress and tradition. Like, he's obsessed with all these, like, modern gadgets that the gypsies bring.
Right.
But he's also, like, super steeped in superstition and myth, So it's like he's trying to drag Macondo kicking and screaming into the future, but he's also clinging to the past.
Like a microcosm of Latin America itself.
Totally, exactly.
And speaking of gypsies, they really shake things up, right?
Oh, I do.
Magnets, ice.
Nice.
A prophecy on some ancient parchments. They're like injecting magic right into the heart of Macondo.
Yeah, and that's where the magical realism really takes root. But, it's not just there for spectacle.
Right.
I mean, it's a reflection of how Latin American history and culture really do blur those lines between reality and fantasy. You think about it, like dictators who felt larger than life, myths that shape entire communities.
Yeah, it makes you realize that magical realism isn't so unrealistic.
Not in that context.
No, not at all.
Especially in that context.
Now, you can't talk about this book without getting lost in the Buendía family tree.
Oh.
I mean, they make royal families look simple.
Oh my gosh, I know.
They're complicated.
I had to make a chart when I was reading this book.
Oh, I should have.
It's so hard to keep track of everyone, but the way those names repeat, it's totally deliberate. Like Garcia Marquez saying, look, history, especially family history, can feel like a broken record, like the same patterns, the same personalities just echoing across generations.
Yeah, and we see that play out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Colonel Aureliano fighting these wars, he just can't win. Yeah, Amaranta letting love turn into bitterness. Rebecca, who's the adopted daughter, she's eating dirt.
Rebecca.
Which is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to bizarre happenings in Macondo.
Oh my God, there's so much weird stuff in this book, but it's like Garcia Marquez is saying, hey, pay attention to these cycles, they matter.
Right.
And what really stood out to me too is how even the women, like Ursula, who are trying to provide some kind of stability, they get swept up in the chaos too.
It makes you wonder if anyone can escape fate in this town.
That's the question, isn't it?
And speaking of escaping, Remedios the Beauty, she ascends to heaven, literally surrounded by bedsheets. I mean, if that's not magical realism at its finest.
It's iconic, that scene.
Yeah, I know. It's more than just a cool visual, though, right?
Right. She represents this unattainable beauty, this pure innocence.
Yeah.
And her ascent just symbolizes that. But you also see how her presence or absence really impacts the men who desired her. Like, it ripples through their lives.
She's this mythical figure woven into the fabric of Macondo.
Totally.
Almost like a saint.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's this recurring image of the yellow butterflies.
Oh, those butterflies.
Every time they show up, you know something's about to happen.
Something big, right?
Yeah, something big, usually tied to love or death.
Yeah, Garcia Marquez doesn't waste a single detail.
Right.
Everything is layered with meaning.
It makes you want to reread the book with like 5 different highlighters.
I know, right?
To keep track of it all.
Like one for each generation or something.
Okay, but before we get totally lost in the magical whirlwind, what about the feeling of the book? I mean, the title alone tells you solitude is a major theme.
Right, and it's not just being physically alone.
No.
The characters are yearning for connection, but they struggle so much to find it.
Yeah.
It's like they're trapped in their own heads, even when they're surrounded by family.
That makes you think, though, right?
It does.
How much of our own solitude is self-inflicted, and how much is just the human condition?
That's deep.
I mean, Colonel Aureliano, he shuts himself off in his workshop, making these tiny goldfishes.
Yeah, and Amaranta, with all that bitterness, she pushes everyone away.
Yeah.
But is it their fault? you know? Or are they shaped by the solitude that's baked into Macondo itself?
Right. Right.
It's like a curse they can't escape.
Yeah, like even in a town bursting with life and love and craziness, you can still feel utterly alone.
And, that's something that I think resonates with a lot of people, right? No matter how connected we are these days, there's still that potential for profound isolation.
Okay, before we move on to the next chapter of our deep dive, I have a question for you, dear listener. Think about a time where you felt truly alone.
Ooh, good question.
What caused it? And how did you cope?
Hold on to that thought.
Yeah.
Because we're going to come back and unpack even more of this.
Yeah, we're going to unpack it even more.
Welcome back. It's fascinating how 100 years of solitude can pack so much into a single town, right?
I know, right? But I think that's Garcia Marquez's genius.
Right.
Using Macondo to look at these bigger themes, like solitude and history and what it means to be human.
Yeah. It's like he's saying, if you want to understand the world, just take a look at this crazy family in this even crazier town.
In their town, yeah, exactly.
And speaking of crazy, let's go back to that solitude we were talking about before the break.
Yeah, let's circle back to that.
Because it's not just like a backdrop.
Right.
It's practically a character in itself shaping the Buendia's lives. In these like really profound ways, like Colonel Aureliano, he retreats into that goldfish workshop almost as if he's trying to shut out the whole world.
It's like he's trying to create this little tiny perfect world.
Yeah.
Where he have all the control, because in the real world, he can't find that.
Exactly, with the messy politics and wars and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you have Amaranta. Her solitude is just like rooted in this deep bitterness.
Right.
And regret. Remember when she burns her hand?
Oh, yeah, that image that's like burned into my brain.
It's so powerful. It's like a physical manifestation of her emotional turmoil.
Yeah, she's punishing herself for loving the wrong person.
Yeah.
For not being able to escape the past. And then there's Rebecca.
Oh, Rebecca.
She takes solitude to a whole other level.
She really does. She shuts herself off completely after her husband dies.
Yeah.
It's like she's choosing to live in this time capsule surrounded by her memories.
Yeah.
Instead of being present.
Yeah, and it's not like anyone can really reach her, right?
No, she only communicates through her servant.
Argenida. Yeah.
Argenida, yeah. And it makes you wonder at what point solitude becomes self-destruction.
Right. That's such a good question that he makes us think about.
Yeah. Is it a form of self-preservation, a way to cope?
Right.
Or is it ultimately leading to more suffering?
Yeah.
There's no easy answers.
No, not at all.
And then you add on this whole idea of fate on top of that.
Yeah, they're almost cursed to repeat the same mistakes.
I know. Generation after generation.
Generation after generation.
The cyclical nature of their lives is just so central to the book, It's like they're caught in this whirlwind.
Yeah.
And they just can't break free no matter how hard they try.
Think about how the names keep repeating.
Oh, yeah. The Arcadios, the Aurelianas.
Yeah.
It's not a coincidence.
No.
Garcia Marquez is doing that on purpose to show how history...
Right.
Personal and societal.
Yeah, society.
Can feel like this broken record.
It makes you think, do we really have free will?
That's the question.
Or are we just these puppets acting out some story that was already written for us a long time ago?
Right. But even though fate is this huge, huge part of the book, the characters still make choices.
They do.
Aureliano knows that war is futile, but he keeps getting sucked back in.
Yeah.
Amaranta could choose to heal, to forgive.
Right.
But she holds on to that bitterness.
So maybe it's not about escaping fate, but just figuring out how to respond to it.
Right. How do we respond to these things that are seemingly out of our control?
Do we let fate control us? Or do we make our own path, even if it's just within those boundaries?
It's like this dance, this push and pull between what we want and the forces that are shaping our lives.
I love that. That's such a good way to put it. It's a dance.
And he captures that so well.
He does. So speaking of cards, let's talk about that ending.
Oh, that ending.
Talk about going out with a bang.
I know that final scene, it's devastating and beautiful all at the same time. Macondo, this town that was born from a dream, it gets swept away by a whirlwind, fulfilling Melchides' prophecy.
It's like this whole magical world just implodes.
It does, but there's also this sense of peace in the way it ends.
Yeah.
Like the cycle has finally been completed.
Like a sigh of relief almost.
Yeah, and it leaves us with this haunting question. What happens after the whirlwind?
Ooh, yeah.
Is it a true ending, or is it just the beginning of another cycle?
Right, because the Buendía family, they're gone now.
Yeah.
But is it really over?
That's a great point.
It's like he's daring us to imagine what comes next.
He is.
To think about the possibility of renewal, even after destruction. Like there's always hope.
Exactly. And that's why I think this book still resonates with so many people.
Decades later.
Because it's grappling with these, like, timeless questions.
It's about life and death.
About life and death and the meaning of it all.
So, dear listener, before we go to the final part of our deep dive, think about this. What resonated most with you about the ending?
Yeah, good question.
Did you find it tragic? Hopeful? Or was it like this weird mix of both?
Yeah.
What do you think it says about the power of stories and memories?
Hold on to those thoughts.
Yeah, hold tight.
Because in our next part, we're going to be exploring the cultural and literary significance of this masterpiece.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to our deep dive into 100 Years of Solitude. We've talked about the Buendía family saga, gone deep into the magical realism, and really felt that solitude in Macondo. But now let's kind of zoom out and talk about the impact of this book.
The legacy.
Yeah, because it's not just a story, it's a landmark.
Oh, absolutely.
It put Latin American literature
on the map.
On the map, yeah, for sure, and helped define magical realism as a genre.
Yeah, and I've read other books with magical or fantastical elements.
Yeah.
But there's something about Garcia Marquez's magical realism that just feels different.
It does. That's what makes it so unique.
I think it's the way he just seamlessly blends the extraordinary and the everyday.
Yeah.
It's not just about levitating priests and women ascending to heaven.
Right.
It's how those things are just treated as normal, a part of life in Macondo.
Yeah, nobody even questions it.
Nobody bats an eye.
Yeah, and that makes it more powerful.
It's like he's saying, in this world, anything is possible.
Which, when you think about Latin American history, dictators, revolutions...
It's myths.
It kind of makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
But he doesn't just focus on the magical. He also looks at the darker parts of history.
Right. The violence.
The political turmoil.
The exploitation.
Like the banana worker massacre. That scene is so brutal, it just breaks your heart.
It's really hard to read.
But it's also a reminder of the injustices that Latin America has faced for centuries.
And I think the way he writes about it, too, with that dreamlike, almost detached tone, it makes it even more haunting.
It does. It makes you realize that magical realism isn't just about escaping reality.
Yeah.
It can be a way to face hard truths.
Absolutely.
And speaking of facing hard truths, there are so many pivotal moments in this book that just stick with you long after you've finished reading.
Totally. Like, for me, one of the most unforgettable scenes is when Colonel Aureliano is facing the firing squad.
Yeah.
It's just this culmination of his life, his wars, his solitude.
Yeah.
And it's tragic, but it's also strangely beautiful.
It's like a Greek tragedy, but in a small Colombian town.
Exactly.
And then there's that ending.
Yeah.
We've talked about it already, but Macondo being swept away, Melchides' prophecy fulfilled. Such powerful imagery of destruction and renewal.
And it leaves you with that question, what happens next?
What comes after?
What stories are left to tell?
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even when a world ends, life and storytelling go on.
Yeah, so as we wrap up our deep dive into 100 Years of Solitude, I want to leave you with this thought. What will you carry with you from this book? What images, characters, lessons will stick with you? Because it's more than just a book. It's an experience.
It's a journey.
Yeah, a journey into humanity.
And I think in reading it, we become a part of its legacy.
Yeah.
Carrying its magic and its wisdom with us.
That's beautiful. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey through Macondo. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep that magical realism alive in your heart.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Bookercast. We hope you enjoyed diving into it as much as we did. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. Your support means the world, and we can't wait to hear your thoughts on this episode.
Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and share this episode with your fellow book lovers. And let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you. See you in the next deep dive. Bye for now, and happy reading.